Hey everybody, this is Jason Langsdorf, and today I want to walk through the steps of setting up an app that is a Node.js app deployed to a server. We're going to use DigitalOcean for that. We're going to secure it with SSL using Let's Encrypt, and that's going to be free. And finally, we're going to get that pointed to the public using an actual domain, and we'll use nginx to do that. And we're going to be able to do it all in about 30 minutes. So stick with me, and let's get rolling. Let's jump in here. We're going to be using DigitalOcean, and once you get logged into your account, you can see this Create Droplet button. So you click that, and it's going to ask you what you want to do. We're going to use Ubuntu 16.04, and I'm going to choose the $5 a month option because we don't need a lot of power here. And it doesn't really matter which one of these you use, so just pick the one that's closest to you. And we want to include an SSH key. So I've already got one added, but if you need to add a new one, you can grab that really easily by doing pb copy and the left less than sign to your SSH directory, and then you want to do your id rsa.pub. If you don't have one of these, there's a great walkthrough on GitHub that'll take you through the steps of doing that, and you would just paste that in. Since I already have mine saved, I'm just going to check that box. I'm going to give it a name. We'll call it Node.js SSL deploy and create it. So if you don't have a DigitalOcean account, you can actually get one using, I have a link, or anybody who is already on DigitalOcean will have a link that will give you $10 in free credit, which using the setup that I just created would let you host your app for free for 2 months. So check the description of this video or check the tutorial for a link to get $10 in credit. All right, so it took a couple seconds to get set up. Now we've got an IP address, and we can log right into that IP address. So we'll get into the terminal here, and we're going to use SSH root at our new IP address, and that's going to bring us into the server. We do want to connect. That's just something you get when you've never connected to a server before. So let's get in there. And now that we're inside, we want to set up some basic security. So we're going to do a couple things here. First, we're going to create a new user, and we're going to give that user sudo privileges. Then we're going to disable login with a password. So we're going to make sure that our new user has an SSH key, and we're going to disable the root login. Because the root login or the root user is a pretty common target for people who are going to do mischief. So the first thing that we want to do is create our user. So we're just going to use add user. I'm going to create a user named Jason. You can do whatever you want. And we need to create a new password. So I'm just going to use a password generator. Let's copy that. And I'm going to just pop that in here because I'll use it again later. Now in our terminal, we will need to dump that twice. And you don't need any of these, so we can just jump right through it. Information is correct, and now we can verify that that user exists by typing ID, and that'll show that we do in fact have a new user. But as you can see in the groups here, that user doesn't have access to sudo. So we're going to modify the user using usermod, and with the AG, that means append groups. We're going to add the sudo group and identify our user. Okay, now when we do it again, you can see we do in fact have sudo access. So that's a good deal. Let's open a new terminal before we get out of root and actually try that login. Or I'm sorry, we can't do that yet because we need an SSH key. How about that? So let's become our new user with su-jason. And now we can see that if we run whoami, we are our new user. And we can make a new dir for SSH. That's going to be in our home directory. We're going to make that only accessible to our user. And inside, we want to create a new file for our authorized keys. And that just means the SSH keys of people who can actually log into this machine. We're using Nano because Nano is a little bit less wonky than things like Vim and Emacs. I actually prefer Vim, but this is far less confusing if you've never used one before. So inside here, we're going to actually run that pbcopy command again. So pbcopy, and you're going to get your SSH key from your machine. Again, if you don't have one of these, you need to head over to GitHub's guide or just search how can I create an SSH key, and you'll get a bunch of good tutorials on how to do that. So I'm going to copy that in there. I'm going to hit Control X, yes, and enter, which saves that file. And now I'm going to change the permissions on it so that I can read and write it, but no one else can touch it. And let's do that. All good. Great. Okay, so now we can move out of being that user. If we run who am I, you can see that we're root again. And we want to disable the password login. So we're actually going to start by making sure that we can log in as our user. So let's exit again. Now we're on my local machine, good. And we're going to log in as the new user. So let's get that IP address from DigitalOcean again. And if we did our SSH key right, it's all going to work the way we want. And it did. So we're in our folder, everything's good. We're in our user's home directory on the server we just created on DigitalOcean. And now, if we use the sudo command, we can get into the SSH config. Oops. And inside, after I get my sudo password, we can use Control W to search. We need to change two settings. The first one is we're going to turn off root login. And that is right here. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do, again, Control W to search, is I want to turn off password authentication. And this one is actually commented out. You can see this, this hash mark here. So let's get rid of that. And then I want to change that to no. And the reason for that is we don't want people to, be able to do a brute force attack here. So let's Control X, yes, hit enter to save. And now we're going to set up basic firewall stuff after we reload SSHD. And this just puts those edits that we made into effect. And we can test this actually if we go into a new terminal and we try to log in as root. Now you remember this worked a minute ago. So I'm going to log in as root. And I get permission denied. But if I log in as me, as my new user, it works as expected, right? So all good there. Now we are going to set up that basic firewall I was talking about. Now for our purposes, I am not a security expert and I don't claim to be. So we're just going to set up the basics. We're effectively going to disable any connections to the server that aren't for SSH, HTTP, which is port 80, and HTTPS, which is port 443. So there's a tool called UFW that comes pre-installed on Ubuntu servers. So we're just going to allow OpenSSH, which is our login tool for SSH. We're going to allow HTTP and allow HTTPS, and then actually enable this firewall, which is disabled by default. So let's do that. OpenSSH. And then we will sudo UFW allow HTTP and HTTPS. Okay. Now, if we enable, it's going to give us a warning about SSH, but we enabled that, so that's not a problem. And we can do sudo UFW status, and it will show us that on both IPv4 and IPv6, we're allowing SSH, port 80, and port 443, which is what we want. So that brings us up to the point where we've got basic security on a server. And from here, we can actually install the things that are going to let us install our app. So let's get a Node app installed. We're going to be using, for the tutorial, this really basic app that I created. This one just outputs a basic message whenever you visit it, and that'll help us see whether or not we have installed it correctly. So we're going to use apt-get, which is an Ubuntu tool for installing things. We need to get git, and then we need to get Node.js, but unfortunately, we need a version of Node.js that apt-get won't install for us. So we need to update apt-get and make sure that it gets the right thing. So we're going to use a curl command to contact node source. Nodesource.com is a really cool little place that just does a lot of annoying things for you. And they've written a script, which is what we're downloading here with curl, that will automatically update the apt-get to install the version of Node that we want it to. So what we're doing is we're downloading this script and then we're executing it as sudo. So we'll run that and it installs everything that we need, gets us set up here. And once that's done, then we can just install Node.js the way that we normally would using apt-get. So let's see, that's in there now. So we'll do apt-get install Node.js. Yes, we do want to continue. Let that run. And once it gets done here, we will be able to just type node version, and you can see that we got version 6.3.1, which is the one that we want. Now, we're going to actually create our app. You can put it wherever you want. I like to keep them organized, so I'm going to create a folder called apps, and I'm in my home directory. So let's get in here, and now you can see I'm in my home directory in a folder called apps, where I will clone git at github.com, and let's get my app. So tutorial, this is the worst repo name to try to type out, I am sorry. Node.js, SSL, DigitalOcean, app.git, and I want to clone it into a folder that is named for my app. So I called my app Node.js SSL deploy.code.langsdorff.com. I'm going for a world record of longest name for anything here. So we'll get that installed. I do want to continue. And it will clone. Wonderful. All right, so we've got our app cloned, and now we can move into it. I don't think we need to run an npm install. I don't think I have any dependencies, but let's just run it anyways. And then we can actually start the app. So now we have this app running at localhost port 5000, but since it's on a server, we can't actually get to it. So the only way that we can actually do this is to test it by logging in again. And we'll get that IP address one more time. And once we're in, we'll just run a curl command and get this localhost. And you can see here, it gave us this HTML output. That is what the app is supposed to do, so we know that it's working. So let's go ahead and exit here. But now we have a problem because in our terminal, we can't do anything right now. Anything that we type here doesn't actually do anything because the app is running. The only way we can do more is to hit Control-C to end the app. So in order to fix that problem and to fix the problem of automatically restarting the app anytime that there's a server restart, we're going to use a process manager, and that process manager is called PM2. And the way that we install that is we're going to actually use npm, and we're going to install it globally using PM2. While that's installing, oh, my bad, had to do that as sudo. So I'll run it again. Let's see here. So that, I believe, worked. So let's make sure we're in the right place. We're in our app, so let's PM2 start app. And the way that I know how to start this is PM2 start just replaces node. So if your start command is node server.js, it would be PM2 start server.js. For me, it's node app, so it's PM2 start app. And now we know our app is running. So we can see here the app name is app. it's online, all that good stuff. So we know that our app is actually functional. And the cool thing about this is because it's running as a process manager, it's in the background. We don't have to create a new terminal session to check if it's running. So let's run that same curl command again, and you can see we got that same output. So even though it didn't take over our terminal, we are still running that app, which is super handy. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to make it so that the app will restart if the server restarts, and we do that with PM2's startup command. And it's there. And it gives us this command here, this command that needs to be run as sudo. And this basically just gives the right environment variables and the command to actually update systemd running as sudo. So let's copy paste that. Not that one. We want to copy paste that one. Run it. Okay. And now it's going to run it so that everything boots at startup, which is what we wanted, and we can move on. So the next thing that we want to do is install Let's Encrypt. And so there's two parts to installing Let's Encrypt. The first thing is we have to actually install some dependencies. So let's start with a clear terminal here. I'm going to move back to my home directory so there's not so much in the terminal. And the dependency is called BC. So we use apt-get install BC. And once we've got that, we're going to clone, using Git, the actual Let's Encrypt repository. https github.com Let's Encrypt. And the tool is also called Let's Encrypt. And we want to copy that to the opt folder, and we'll give it its own folder called Let's Encrypt. Now, before we can actually use this tool, we're going to move into the directory, but we can't do anything just yet because before this tool will run properly, we need to have a DNS address pointing to our server. So get that IP address and log into whatever tool you use to manage your DNS. I'm using Cloudflare, and I have already set this up once. And let's see, Node.js SSL deploy, so let's fix that. I want it to be node.js.ssl-deploy.code, and it's ultimately going to be .langsdorff.com, which is here. And I'm pointing that to 685393, 685393, great. So let's save, all good. And now we're actually ready to run this command. The command that we want to run is let's encrypt auto. So let's encrypt auto, if I can do it without typoing. Let's encrypt auto, and we're going to do cert only and make it a standalone script, or a standalone cert. And this takes a little bit, so we'll talk a bit about what this is doing and why it's so cool. So the thing that's really been challenging about SSL is it's such a, like, obviously you want it, but it's been this huge pain in the ass to get because it's expensive. You know, a certificate runs anywhere from $100 a year to the higher end ones run thousands of dollars a year. And it's also a pain in the ass. You know, you have to get a certificate purchased from a company, and then you have to go to your server company and figure out like which files you need to download from your certificate company and where you need to upload those and in what order. It's a huge, confusing mess, and unfortunately that has to be done every year to update the server to keep it running. So that was that's a huge deterrent. It's a pain in the ass. It's expensive, and so what Let's Encrypt did that was really cool is that they made this whole process extremely easy. It's a couple commands. I mean, like all this stuff that's happening, I think I've run one command so far with Let's Encrypt other than installing the tools. And there's, a couple steps it's about to ask me, and then it will be installed. And the other cool thing, which we'll do in a moment, is it auto renews. And I'll talk about that more when we get there because we just got our setup box, this really cool blue looking DOS box. And I'm going to put in my email. I would recommend you put in yours and hit enter. And it's going to ask us for our agreement to the terms. Hit enter to confirm that. And then we need to get our DNS. Now I'm going to double check this to make sure that I've got it right. I'm just going to copy paste. It's that.lengstorf.com. All right, so that is my domain name. Hit enter. That will actually run it. And once this is done, it says, congratulations, your certificate and chain have been saved. And so now we have this full chain.pem, which is in this directory here under our domain name. But you can see it's only good until November 6th. Now, because today's August 8th, that's kind of a pain in the ass. You know, that expires pretty quickly. And this would be a deal breaker for a lot of apps, except they make this automatic to renew. So what's nice is there's just a command that's already built in. So let's run that command, auto, and there's just the renew command. And when we run it, it checks and it says it's not due for renewal yet. So obviously it didn't do anything right now. But if it was within 30 days of the expiration date, it would have renewed that certificate for us with no additional input from us, which is great. But since we don't want to have to log into our server once a quarter to fix this problem, we're just going to set it up to run automatically using cron. So to do that, we're going to get into the cron tab, and we'll use nano because that's a little bit easier to understand. And we'll jump down to the bottom. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up the first one to run at 1 a.m. every Monday. And the way we do that is like so. And on the times that it runs, 1 a.m. every Monday, we want to run this command. And that is the let's encrypt auto renew, and the output we're going to send to a log, which we will keep here. Let's encrypt renewal.log. Okay, now on the next line, we need to run something else, which we haven't set up yet, which is a restart of nginx. And that's going to run 30 minutes after the renewal. And the reason that this needs to be run is that we need nginx to restart in order to get the new script. So we've got those in there. We're going to save, hit yes, and enter. And now we're done. So now we've got a cron job that runs, and that will automatically renew our script or our SSL certificate, and it will restart nginx to make sure we're using the new certificate if one is available. So at this point, we are actually ready to point the server, or our domain name to our app. And in order to do that, we're going to actually avoid dealing with nodes, domain names, SSL, all that. We're just going to use nginx as a reverse proxy. So let's install nginx. Okay. And the reason we're doing this is because nginx is a little easier to configure and a little bit less of a headache than trying to do it through Node.js itself. So let's jump in and use nano again to do the first step, which is to actually point all traffic to SSL. And we're just going to empty this file because we don't need it. There's probably an easier way to do this, but I just hold Control K, and it slowly deletes everything. Perfect. Now, I'm going to copy paste this in the interest of not screwing it up. So the first part that we're going to get is this part here. And what this says is to listen on port 80 and also port 80 over IPv6. And we're going to use a 301 redirect, which is a permanent redirect, which is better for the SEO, and send it to the requesting host and request URI over SSL. For now, that's all we need to do. So Control X, Y, Enter. Now, we need to do one thing for security. I'll get it running and then I'll explain what's happening. We're trying to get an A+ score for our SSL certificate. And in order to do that, this is a very easy step. It's one command and then a few seconds of waiting, and it will increase our score to an A+. So this is what's called a Diffie-Hellman group, and I don't understand the deep details of it. All I know for sure is that there's something called a Diffie-Hellman group, which is a way to cryptographically sign, I think, when two servers have a handshake. And that's used in verifying the SSL certificate and making sure that the connection is in fact secure, not being spoofed, all those good things. Now this is it's a very computationally intense thing, which is what we're seeing happen right now with all this kind of gibberish output here. And the nice thing about it is that while this is very advanced level stuff that's being done, it's very easy to do. It takes 20 to 30 seconds to generate this Diffie-Hellman group, and it boosts your security on your site by it makes it more secure. And it's so easy to do, it's just one command, that it doesn't make sense not to do it. I feel like there's one thing to be said for oh God, it took me an extra 15 hours to get this extra security score. But this is 30 seconds. We can all spare 30 seconds to make sure that our apps are less likely to, compromise somebody's data or let somebody do something shady to the people who are using our apps. Just a few more seconds here and we should be good to go. All right, so now that we've got that set up, we need to configure how the SSL certificates are going to be handled. And since I'm not a security expert, I'm actually going to defer to a real security expert. The team over at CipherList has just put together a strong nginx SSL setup. So let's just grab this, and we're going to drop this into a new file that we can reuse across any apps that we deal with in the future. So we're going to put it in a snippets folder, and we'll call it SSLparams.conf. And inside, we just paste this. Now, there's one change that we need to make, and if you look up here, there are these DNS IP1 and IP2. Now, this is for something called SSL stapling, which is a way to reduce overhead, make the traffic a little bit faster, and it requires a DNS resolver, which I don't have. So this IP address that I'm putting in, these are Google's DNS resolvers, which if you don't have them, this is fine to use, so just drop that in there. And now we just need to add in that Diffie-Hellman group that we created. And we do that using SSL-DH-param, and then the path to that group that we created. So certs dhparam.pem semicolon, and then we can save and quit. So Control X, yes, enter. All right. Now we're going to finish configuring nginx by setting up the rest of our SSL sites enabled. And we're going to do that with sudo nano, etc. nginx sites enabled default. And underneath, we're going to add this block here. I'm going to paste it in, and then we'll walk through what it actually does. And just double checking that I got my Node.js SSL deploy. Node.js SSL deploy. Great. So let's copy that. Let's move back in here. And we will paste to get it in. So what we're doing with this is we're enabling HTTP2, and that is on both IPv4 here and IPv6. we are adding our domain name. This would be whatever you decided to call your domain. Then we target our SSL certificates that we created with Let's Encrypt. And down here, we're including these SSL params that we just copy pasted from CipherList. Then here, we're actually setting up the reverse proxy. And this is the important part. I mean, all of these are obviously important because we need them in order for it to work, but this is the most relevant part to our app. So our Node app is running at localhost port 5000. So what we're saying is any traffic that comes in on the SSL port should be forwarded with all of the headers that we're setting here to our Node app at port 5000. And now once we get that set up, we can save. So Control X, yes, and enter. All right, so now that we have our nginx settings saved, let's test those. All right, so that says that the syntax is okay, we didn't have any problems, so in theory, we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and start this, and we do that with systemctl start nginx. Okay, now the moment of truth, we created a domain. That domain is here, so let's get that. Go to .code.langsdorff.com, and there we go. So that is the shortest possible version I could come up with of setting up an SSL protected app, running a Node.js app through a server that's publicly accessible and actually ready to run. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do is let's just go ahead and actually verify that our SSL server is installed correctly, which we're going to do using Qualys SSL Labs tester. This takes a little bit of time, so I will actually skip to the end here. It takes just a few minutes. Okay, so we got our test results, and as you can see here, we got an A+, which is the highest rating you can get for an SSL certificate. That was the whole goal of what we're doing, and now we know it was super easy to deploy a Node.js app to a brand new server. It took us about 30 minutes from start until now to get everything done. I mean, we configured that server from scratch. So I hope this makes it a little less daunting to put good security in practice when you are deploying your apps, to make it a little more confidence-inspiring for your users, and to actually take the hassle out of it for you. Because again, this certificate was free. It was super easy to set up, and it's going to be automatically renewed so that you never have to actually think about it again. Now that, I think, is about the biggest win that comes out of this. All right, everyone, thanks for sticking with me. That was a 30-minute walkthrough of setting up a server from scratch to serve a Node.js app with SSL for free through Let's Encrypt using nginx as a reverse proxy. If this video was helpful, I'm going to be doing more of these. I'm going to try to do them regularly. So subscribe to my YouTube channel or check back regularly on the blog because I really deeply crave validation. Share it, comment, say good things about me, email my mom, tell her I'm doing good work. Whatever makes you feel good. That's what I live for. If you've got an idea for something that you'd like me to build and do on video, please let me know because I'm doing these because I want them to be helpful. And if there's something in particular that you'd like to see built and see a way to do it, I'd love to take that on. So you can send me an email, you can leave a comment on this video, you can hit me up on Facebook or Twitter, whatever's easiest for you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Bye. What do I want to talk about? I don't want to talk about anything. Start that again.